Phrasal verbs are frequently used by native speakers as they converse with each other and rant on about a bunch of nonsense that is unimportant gibberish. Are you sick of just smiling and pretending that you know what is being said to you at conferences and during small talk around the tea kettle? Look no further, as we are going to break down phrasal verbs for you, and offer you some hacks and advice for picking up specific phrasal verbs that will have you engaging people in English with small talk about everyday topics and industry-specific technical subject matter like a champ. Phrasal verbs are simply a verb and an adverb particle that are occasionally used with a preposition, and native speakers love them as they are idiomatic verb phrases that allow them to emphasize themselves with greater clarity and express their emotions for enhanced empathy from their audiences. First, we must say what phrasal verbs are not. That is, they are not prepositional verbs. Despite looking similar, they are not translatable, and they are not known in their entirety by any English speaker in the world. That's a lot to take in, but the truth is that phrasal verbs are created daily and can be dialect-specific. With that said, one should never give up, and you should accept the phrasal verb challenge. There are over 5,000 phrasal verbs in the English language, but honestly, linguists do not actually know, because they do change slightly in subgroups throughout the world, and debate exists about the multiple meanings that phrasal verbs have. Why even bother? Before you quit, let me help out. We can quantify aspects of phrasal verbs. That is, every phrasal verb used in English can be replaced by a regular verb. This may cause the sentence to sound more formal and take some of the emphasis away from the speaker's or writer's meaning, but in general, the basic thought is conveyed in a nearly identical fashion. Secondly, all transitive phrasal verbs can be used in a non-transitive manner, and in the case of sentences with an object pronoun, we can just use a proper noun instead. Finally, we can use the context of a conversation or surrounding text to help us make an educated guess at what the phrasal verb meaning could be. If you want to be fluent in English, you should not waste your time memorizing long lists of vocabulary with the exception of irregular verbs and prepositional verbs, as it is essentially a waste of your time, meaning your time could be better spent practicing one of the four main skills of language learning, that is, speaking, reading, listening comprehension, and writing. There are 5 types of phrasal verbs: transitive, separable, 3-word transitive, intransitive, and inseparable. We are going to discuss all 5 types, and we will be offering some tips and hacks that will make understanding how to deal with them in speech and writing as easy as possible. Remember, regardless of the fancy linguistic terms used for the different types of phrasal verbs, at their core, they are just an idiomatic verb that can be replaced. Transitive phrasal verbs are phrasal verbs that take a direct object. In the sentence, "I went over the reports last night," went over is the phrasal verb, meaning reviewed or read, and the direct object is the reports. Transitive phrasal verbs can be separable and inseparable. Separable phrasal verbs are a subcategory of transitive phrasal verbs. That is, they are phrasal verbs that take a direct object, but the direct object can go between the verb and the adverb particle if one chooses to use it in this manner. In the sentence, "I had to hand the assignment in," the phrasal verb is hand in, and the direct object is assignment. We can see that this phrasal verb is transitive and separable. If you are unsure if a phrasal verb is separable or not, look for the direct object, and separate it if you choose to do so. Remember, however, there's no obligation to separate phrasal verbs, and even when an object pronoun is used, one can change it to a proper noun and use the phrasal verb in an inseparable manner. 3-word transitive phrasal verbs contain a phrasal verb, an adverb particle, and a preposition. These are considered to be very problematic for both non-native speakers and writers of English, but we have a great hack for you that will make using them so much easier. As you can see, 3-word phrasal verbs can be both transitive and intransitive, and in the case of the separable examples, these are not changeable in a similar manner to the 2-word transitive phrasal verbs, meaning one has to use it in a separable way. Our hack here is to just change the sentence if you are not 100% comfortable using them. That is, "I got my bag back from the airline," can become, "My bag was returned from the airline," passive voice, or "The airline returned my bag." The only difference between the proposed alternative sentence and the sentence with the three-word transitive phrasal verb that is separable is the level of formality. Intransitive phrasal verbs are phrasal verbs that do not take a direct object. Intransitive phrasal verbs are generally found at the end of sentences, but they can occasionally be followed by an indirect object in certain situations and are often followed by adverbs of time or prepositional phrases. In the sentence, "I won't give in," give in is a phrasal verb, meaning, to meet the demands of another, and as we can see, it is intransitive and does not have a direct object. Inseparable phrasal verbs are transitive, meaning they take a direct object, and they can also be three-word phrasal verbs that are inseparable as well. Spotting the difference between transitive phrasal verbs that are separable and inseparable can be tricky, so if you aren't 100% sure, just use the phrasal verb in an inseparable manner. Some linguists will classify phrasal verbs into a verb and a preposition, meaning that the adverb particle will begin with a prepositional phrase. We, however, disagree, as this would not make a phrasal verb a phrasal verb. Thus, our analysis is that the adverb particle functions as an adverb particle for the verb and also a preposition for the prepositional phrase. In the sentence, "They broke into the bank," broke into is inseparable, and it has an adverb particle that functions as a preposition as well in the prepositional phrase, "into the bank." Bank is the direct object of the sentence, making this a transitive, inseparable phrasal verb. English is a Germanic language, but it has undergone so many changes in its history. Linguistically, it still follows Germanic syntax, and phrasal verbs are one area in which we can see the influence of German on English. To be clear, English is a mixture of many different languages if we are talking about the lexicon, as English was a borrowing language earlier on than most other languages. 60% of English's vocabulary comes from French, but English is a stressed-time language, using isochrony, so the French vocabulary in English doesn't sound French but a Germanic form of French, that is, English. For native speakers, phrasal verbs are easy to use and understand, and they are elements in English from commoners that have accumulated over millennia of use. They should be avoided in business and academic communication, and Latinate verbs should be used in place of them. Remember, however, that phrasal verbs sound natural to native speakers, and historically, they have been favored over the verbs of the aristocracy, that is, Latinate verbs. Thus, phrasal verbs are the verbs of common people and will remain a part of the language in small talk until English is no longer used. There is a large list of phrasal verbs in the links below the description of this video, and we recommend familiarizing yourself with some but not memorizing them. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we hope that you better understand and respect phrasal verbs. The goal of this video was to eliminate anxiety surrounding their use and to offer some tips and tricks on using them. We encourage you to do further research through the links below this video's description and to visit our channel's video library for more assistance on your path to English fluency. Please like, subscribe, and share, and we wish you good luck.